Let's start.
Okay, we'll start. Hello. Okay. Okay, so here's the nice thing about this talk. It is the plus version of the one that I gave at GDC. I know that at least Manny was at GDC. Was anybody else at GDC this year? Excellent. I know Alex was also at GDC. All right, but you didn't Manny came to my talk. He's here for talk number 2. I am going to, that's not true. We had lunch. Or is it, hey, look, GDC. There's an extra Boston section in here. You're gonna hopefully make use of that. Mastering Steam. If you're in the room with a Godot game on Steam, that's a perfect Venn diagram of everything. I am going to go on record saying that game discovery is broken. Does anybody disagree with me? We can have words with afterwards. You might be right. It might be fine. But in 2026, that's this year, a greater amount of attention is concentrated on a smaller number of games than ever before. So I want to talk about 2 things. One is the state of discovery, specifically for desktop, and 2, what you can do to get your game discovered. So show of hands, who has a Steam game right now up, released? Who has a Steam game in progress? Who is someday probably maybe going to release on Steam? Let me see big hands. I'm hard of, okay, you came to the right talk. This is great. In 2026, discovery overwhelmingly starts on one of these platforms, social, video. Gamers spend about 126 billion hours a year, not all at once, on YouTube and Twitch videos. So that alone is where the bulk of discovery happens, and like TikTok and so forth and so on. This is really good because you get a bunch of people discovering your games here. But the problem is that these platforms tends to concentrate attention towards a few small titles. And maybe, I don't know where Kevin went, maybe Kevin's title, where are you, Kevin? There he goes. Look, ask him about how to make Steam work. He has an awesome title. But example of concentration, according to OC&C and Google report, 50% of all Twitch views go to covering the top games. Well, that sounds okay because you have the other 50% going to everybody else, right? Well, no. First of all, as you go to games 11 through 20, they get the lion's share of the rest of them, and then 21 through 30 and so forth and so on get the lion's share of the remaining, which means that games like 50 and 51 in the ranking get very little attention. And what's even worse is that we're not even just talking about games from last year. This top 10 games is from any time period, right? So GTA 5 probably still gets more play than many of your games, which is unfortunate because you're doing something new and interesting. So you got 126 billion hours of discovery. Most of it goes to top 10, 20, 30 titles. And so it is no wonder that all of this attention being concentrated means that we get stats like this. In 2023, how many people have seen this stat? In 2023, the top 10 games on Steam took 61% of new release revenue. And in fact, the top 100 took 91%, which means that 9% went to the remaining 15,000 games. And of course, even that is not evenly distributed. So let's look at a look at last year. If we go to 2025, how many of you here, this is super interactive, this is more interactive than the GDC talk. I'm talking to each of you. Boxlighter method, familiarity, hands up. Okay, I see some half hands up. That's okay. We don't always have sales figures for all games. I don't know how much game number 15 in the ranking sold, but we can use review count as a proxy for sales figures. So there's a thing that says, Michael Boxlighter came around and he says, you know what? Roughly speaking, if you take the number of reviews that you see on Steam, multiply by a constant, let's call it the Boxlighter coefficient, multiplied by the list price, then you get a rough estimate as to the gross sales of that. So we can use review count as a proxy for sales. And if you do that, that is public. Right now we have here a graph of review count to rank for every game that launched last year. So here's number 1, and it's over at that's probably Wukong or something like that. And then you see number 2 and number 3 and so forth and so on. The top games get well into the 5 figures of review counts. And multiply that by 35 by list price, and you'll get gross. Look at how steep that fall off is. Maybe you can't even see the curve. If you look at the lower left, you see this really small sort of bevel right there. So this is the challenge that we're up against. And that is why I'm here to talk about today. Well, who the heck am I? My name is Ichiro. I've been in games for about 30 years. My first studio became Sony Online Denver. My second company is Dejobaan Games. It's one of the longest running game studio, indie studios in the world at over a quarter century now. We've been on Steam since about 2009. I've also done a bunch of game discovery work over the years. So if you're old school like I am, you might remember What's on Steam or micro trailers. It was a Twitter bot that just sort of tweeted micro trailers, little Twitter, trailers about all games. As a result of all of this, in 2018, Valve approached me to improve recommendations on Steam. And you don't say no to Valve, especially when you're like, can I work from Boston and do whatever I want? While I was there, I helped establish something called Steam Labs, which is a research group around game discovery. This now helps about 130 million people find 120,000 plus games from over 80,000 studios, including many of yours. So I've done a bunch of work on the storefront, but since then, I really wanted to tackle discovery at the root. So if you remember, we are here on socials and video. And these are where discovery primarily happens. Steam is great, but Steam is like the end of the journey for this. So I think it's that top part that we need to tackle. So that's what I'm doing now. I started my new company a couple of years ago, Totally Human Media. We recently launched a new platform for discovery called We Love It. And I would love if somebody could tell me if that QR code works. If it doesn't work, don't tell me, but if it does work, please do. Excellent, I got a thumbs up. Bookmark it. It's going to be useful to you as game developers on Steam because we are, it's consumer facing, but we also are going to have a bunch of dev facing tools. Let's do one thing that I did not do in my GDC talk. And I love San Francisco, but I love Boston better, so I'm going to talk about this. 7 concrete tips for your Steam store page. All right. I'm going to just go through these. I'm going to go through these off the top of my head, so forgive me if I skip number 3. All right. The way that you want to portray your Steam page is, I think, at first, with the notion that consumers will come in and they will exist on your Steam page for a split second before they decide whether they want to read more or not. Right? Most developers are like, I'm going to just, every single word needs to matter and all the tags need to matter. And then, I have to have this great trailer. Most gamers are just going to come here. They're going to make a split-second decision. And if it's not for them or if it doesn't look like it's for them, which is tragic, they're going to bounce. That's why, so this is one of our games from a few years ago. This really tells you what kind of a game it is. I clicked a pause in the middle of the trailer, so maybe this does not look like an adventure/visual novel game, but look, there's reading there. It's about cute monsters. And this is good because if you like reading and cute monsters, that one's not so cute right now, then you might like this game. If you don't, then everything on this page should signal, it's okay not to waste your time, and that's fine with me. So when you look at your Steam store page, don't, put it away for a day, come back to it, give it literally a 3-second glance, and ask yourself, does this tell me everything that I need to know about the game? Number 1. Number 2, a fabulous and grokkable capsule. So you see capsule arts everywhere on Steam, and I want them to be 2 things. I want them to be amazing, fabulous. Like, what's the best capsule art on this? Anybody want to? Yeah?
The King is Watching.
King is Watching? Yeah?
Second.
Okay. It's completely subjective, and what works for you may not work for me, but I love that capsule. There are actually, all these capsules are very good. I mean, they signal quality, they signal something interesting. So I would say they're all fabulous. Let's say, thumbs up. Are they all grokkable? Are you able to understand what kind of game it is from the capsule and how to differentiate that game from others? So King is watching, I actually can't tell what kind of game it is. I see Terminal Brigade. I am pretty sure that's going to be some sort of shooter, and in fact, it's a first-person hero shooter, which totally makes sense. What do we got here? Another farm, roguelike rebirth. I mean, that's clearly going to be something cute and possibly mean because it's roguelike, but that sort of wears its heart on its sleeve. So fabulous, high quality, everybody wants that, and then grokkable. So ideally, I love Monster Train, but what is going on in this? I can't tell what's going on. It's very difficult. It says high quality, but it's sort of confusing if you don't know what Monster Train is all about. When you do your capsule art, a convenient way to test it is to take a bunch of other capsules, put it in Photoshop or whatever, and mix them together with yours. So let's say that yours is, I don't know, Gatekeeper. You put that there, and you put all of them there, and you put it away, and then you show it to people, and you're like, what do you notice about these capsules? You will get honest answers about what people think about your capsule art, and you can look at it and say, oh, you know what, there's way too much green. It should obviously be, red, and there should be some weird-looking dude looking at you. Okay. Can you read this? Did you read that? Who read the whole thing? Nobody reads short descriptions unless they're already very, very much interested in a game. Developers pay a lot of attention to the words that are going in here, and bless you, and they're not inherently that interesting or relevant compared to the whole at a glance, and I'm doing this, what is this? Just look at it at a glance, right? People don't like to read unless they're already invested in what's on the screen. So let's actually look at this here. The lesson that I'm trying to say is don't sweat this one too much, right? Don't try to pretend that somebody's going to sit down and it's a new game. Let me read the description. They don't do that. Once they are interested, how do you structure your short description? I like things that are filled with verbs. I like things that are filled with genre signifiers. So this is one we did some years ago for a game called T-30. Plan a city and build a space fleet, two things, to escape a dying Earth before time runs out. All right? You have 30 minutes to scavenge a post-apocalyptic environment, to build infrastructure, grow crops, generate power, and assemble rockets to save as many people as you can. I think it's a little wordy, but I'll stand by it as being a reasonable one. This leads with mechanics. It does not lead with lore. Unless you are freaking He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, you don't have the buy-in from your customers yet. When they love your game, then they'll care about that. To lead with, in an ancient world where Earth was don't start with any of that. Gameplay verbs, personal pet peeve, don't use the word unique. We'll get to that, I think, depending on how much time we have in the thing. And you don't need to include, you do not need to start with the game's name because it's literally on the page 5 other times. I see it's T-30, is it? No, you're wasting real space. You got 1-2 words that the person will skim over before they glaze over, so use those. What else am I going to do? Okay, I am going to, Morgan isn't here, so I'm going to rag on Civ. Vary your screenshots up. If all of your screenshots kind of look and mean the same things, then you're kind of wasting space. You got, maybe 5 or 6 slots for screenshots before you have to scroll to get to the remainder of them. Make them varied. How do you do that? Well, example, just Slay the Spire 2, which, their art style is pretty simple, but I believe they did a pretty decent job of demonstrating a breadth of gameplay and modes in their screenshots, right? First one, you're playing cards. Second one, there's some sort of merchant there. Third one, you got, talking. There's talkie times. And then finally, we got, the Necrobinder. So that sort of suggests to somebody looking at it the first time, bam, these things are going to happen. And you do that really, really quickly, and you win, and you make a bazillion dollars. What else we got? The other thing, aside from varying the screenshots, I would say go with screenshots that demonstrate gameplay, which this doesn't. what is that? That's Batman, right? That doesn't tell me that much about the game. Maybe a little tiny bit about the game, but like compare to vampire crawlers, vampire donuts, where like, clearly you know what's going on. You're playing these things and it's going to be pixel and it's going to be wonderful. Do that rather than that. And I'll tell you when you can do the left one towards the end of this. What else we got? Trailer tips. Do not open within a world, right? Do not open with with the world, right? Open really, really quickly, really, really snappily, because as Chris Zukowski, who studies this stuff, showed in qualitative studies, consumers tend to go to the page, and if they don't see something that they want to see, and we'll get to that in a minute, they start scrubbing through your trailer. Your wonderful trailer that you spent so much time on and just decomposing everything, they like ruin the whole experience. What do they want to see? They want to see, is this game relevant to me? This is what I started with, T-minus 30. T-minus 30 is a fast-paced city builder. Who doesn't like city builders here? I actually am not a huge fan of it, right? So it's okay if you put your hands up. You see this and you skip it, and that's okay. That's the whole point of all of this. And if you like city builders and you liked the idea of action plus city builder, then you can opt in on this. All right. 6, tag correctly. Back early Steam Labs days, we did something called the Tag Wizard. It was Lars Doucet, my partner in crime there. And he helped put together this wonderful thing where you can go from sort of category to category, top-level genres, et cetera, and pick tags. And the way it works is you go through, and as you select the tags inside of all these categories, it will say, hey, similarly tagged games, listen to this. Don't try to pick games that are really, really popular if they are different from the experience that you're providing, because the games will be shown to the wrong people, and then people will get disappointed, and they'll go to another games. Go to another game. I should drink some water. Here. Personal opinion: drop low value tags. The top tags are worth more than the bottom tags. So whenever I see something like indie, or I don't know if they did Bell drop beautiful, or there's some value judgment. Like a tag like beautiful, colorful, that sort of stuff, you can tell from the art assets. So, Trover is definitely colorful and Portal is more stark. You don't need to tell the consumer what they already know. You don't need to say that it's an indie game, because here in 2026, nobody gives a shit, right? I do, but consumers basically, it's not like 15 years ago where indie was like, oh my God, we gotta get indie games. Now every game is indie. All right, you are allowed to break every single one of these rules if you have what's called good tofu, and I'll describe that in a minute. Top of funnel. It means that if you are Civilization, and even Civ has problems, you can get away with breaking all of these rules. You can put screenshots that look like this, and people who are fans of the genre and the game and the series will know what all of these mean. You don't have to put UI into your shots if you are, I don't know, what is, I'm blanking. Popular strategy game, anybody? StarCraft. All right, if StarCraft 3 comes out, 4, what are we on at this point? You probably don't have to put your UI on. We did a study with a data scientist, Dr. Tim Ermolov of Vaporlens, and we actually found that if you lose the UI from your screenshots, let me rephrase this. If you don't have UI on your screenshots, you actually gross a lot more than if you have UI in your screenshots. You want to guess why that is? On average, games without UI in their shots make significantly more than those without. Guess. Anyone?
It's more successful.
Yeah, because Civilization can get away with it, right? Control for that, and even Slay the Spire, put the UI in. So put the UI in that. All right. How are we doing for time? We're 20 minutes in there. Okay. You can break out of that. My goal for everybody in this room is to make it so that none of this matters. I feel bad for saying this. I don't want you to have to worry about your Steam page because it's the end of the customer's journey. They should already know about your game and already want to love your game by the time they get to the Steam store page, so that when they get there, they say, okay, the reviews are great, screenshots, yep, that's the game I'm looking for. Ooh, it's on sale for 25% off. It's the checkout aisle. Valve looks at this page as the checkout aisle, and so should you. Unfortunately, some games, for many games, it's the only time that a consumer, gamer, human will ever see it, which is kind of sad, but that's a different thing. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to talk about this game discovery. What did the last 20 years of Steam look like? Roughly speaking, in the beginning, in 2005, there were a couple of dozen games on Steam, 22 games here. And if you fast forward to when I put my first game on Steam in 2009, that was up to a whopping 335 new titles for the year. And that number grows roughly linearly until 2012, which is when Valve introduced Steam Greenlight, which is when users could vote on which games got in. That year, we had about 1,600 games total. That's still about 343 games launched in a year, so that is going linearly. And from there, when Steam Direct came along, it jumped. In 2017, we saw 6,000 new titles, bringing the total to over 16,000 right there. Flash forward to last year, there were about 120,000 games on the platform, 23,000 titles added in a single year. And if you're hip deep in game development for the desktop, these numbers probably don't surprise you. You've probably seen them some places. What is interesting when we look into the problem and the consumer kind of like psychology of it is that there aren't actually too many games for the number of gamers out there. Gamers have varied tastes. Right? There's a lot of research and evidence to demonstrate that they can absorb more games than they actually ever encounter. Let me tangent a moment to do that. How do gamers find games? Right? Well, for most goods and services, what you do, you might have heard terms like the sales funnel or the buyer's journey or top of funnel, bottom of funnel. That's where tofu comes up. It sort of boils down to these three steps. There is first an initial awareness of a game. And as we said, for most games, for most consumers, this happens on social and video platforms. In smaller numbers, it happens on Discord, that sort of stuff. You might find out about it on Slack. You might find out about it in the water cooler. And then sometimes, oftentimes for many games, but not for many consumers as a whole, as weird as that sounds, on Steam itself. And hopefully, my platform's launching, so hopefully more and more of that. But by and large, after you go through the first awareness, you become aware of a game for the first time, you bounce. Because most of the time, you're not going to be interested in the particular game that you're seeing, right? Like you see a game and it's a freaking city builder, and who wants to do a city builder? That's crazy, man. And you forget about it. And you probably will hear about it a few times before it sinks in. But then if it's relevant to you, you get interested in it. So maybe you're like, you know what? I'm not a huge city builder fan, but I can do it in 30 minutes. That kind of, I have a 2-year-old. It's tough to do long gameplay sessions, except on Friday night when Manny shoots me in Sonzo, but that's a different story. And then you might do some research. You might read a review. You might watch a Let's Play. You watch a stream of it. Or if it's 90% off and you've heard about it before and it's $1.99, then you might just pick it up and that short circuits everything. But normally, game's not going to be on sale. If it's interesting, you'll go to Steam and you'll look at it and say, "Man, this looks great. It's a little bit of a discount." If you don't find a reason not to purchase it, you'll click on purchase. 2009, that was straightforward. There were about 580 games, 335 launched that year. that means 6 a week, man. We were up against 6 other games. That was a lot easier. In 2009, you could learn as a consumer about all the 6 games that came out. Is what I guess ours is up front and center, if you're familiar with that one from '09. If you're interested, you could literally go to Rock, Paper, Shotgun and read about every single one of these. And then, again, you go there and you pick it up on Steam. It's great. By the way, we have a Guinness World Record for breaking Steam with that name, and I'm delighted that they still hired me afterwards, but it's a third story. So let's fast forward nearly 2 decades. In 2025, you had 23,000 launches a year, 450 games in a week. I'm not going to belabor this a huge amount, but you see like 64 games a day. That is a huge amount of competition right there. So if you go back to the de facto game discovery surface, social and video, they dwarf Steam in terms of the time gamers spend discovering stuff. These platforms can't or won't handle that. There is a financial reason why they want to focus all the attention, which is a fourth talk right there. They actually do a really bad job of discovery. They won't tell you, for example, you like Minecraft, and I think it's, and I observe that it's because you like exploring subterranean things. Here's Voxile, or here's another game where you do that. No, it says you like Minecraft videos, here's more Minecraft videos. So going back, this is a tangent to my original point, consumer research actually suggests that it's not the number of games or the number of games that are a problem, it's the discovery surface. So 3 sets of studies, first saying that people like a variety of things, consumers are very varied in their tastes, not everybody likes the same flavor of ice cream. Second principle says that algorithms are hugely responsible for a concentration of interest. We know that, I know that because I worked for a platform. TikTok and YouTube, et cetera, are tuned for engagement, not for expanding your tastes. So the third thing is that improving recommendations, when you do put your thumb on the scale and you show the right games to the right people, you end up getting a greater variety of things, people interested in a greater variety of games. So simple exercise, do I want to do this? I don't want to go over time. All right, I'll talk about Manny again. So Manny, sometimes we play. By the way, anybody, if you go to the Slack, the Boston Slack, you can play Isonzo with us on Friday night. Maybe you go out partying. I don't know. I'm 51, man. I just sleep. My buddies and I like to play Isonzo. And we tend to like first-person shooters with at least a few solid reviews, multiplayer online co-op. So we look for new stuff every 6 months. So if we start applying these criteria, our shopping choices look like this. So from a library of 120,000 titles, we pick games that are well-reviewed, 80%. That's down to 67,000 titles, still a lot. And we're like, we need games that at least have some reviews, so we narrow it down to ones with 100 reviews. That's down to 9K. And we're looking for a first-person shooter. That's down to 3K. Co-op, multiplayer, 500 games. And we do this every 6 months. So there are actually 10 games with all of those criteria. Here is the list. And in fact, number 10 is a first-person online multiplayer co-op shooter. It has all those tags, but it's actually 9-ball roulette, right? Technically, but not really one. So really looking for 9 games. So there is no mechanism in video games that consistently delivers this experience to this broad population of gamers. It's very difficult to drill down to say, hey, what do we need? But there are only freaking 9 games that we care about at a given time. So what do we do? How many games are being undiscovered? Do gamers actually want more games? The answer is many and yes. So if you take a look at games that are well-reviewed, 80% or higher, games with 50 and 500 between 50 and 500 player reviews, which says that there's a good enough signal. This means that there are enough people who said, yeah, it's good, 80%, and not so many people that it's going to pop up and be like Slay the Spire 3 or something like that. We would call these kind of like hidden gems because they're amazing, but nobody ever hears about them. The number of games on Steam that fall into this category is 10,203, and it's gone up since. These are over 10,000 games that are of excellent quality that nobody's ever heard of. So lost gems, hidden gems, whatever you want to call them. So what are we doing? Yeah, I think I can skip forward. We know that. We already talked about that. Let's talk about how it should work, right? This is important to you, I think, because if you're marketing your game, if you believe anything that I say, marketing your game off of Steam is going to be your most important thing. So the way that it should work is that if you like Baldur's Gate 3, and it's because in that game you can coat the ground in oil, burn your enemies to death when you light it on fire, then you should check out Noita, because in Noita you can do exactly that, right? Discovery should be this kind of process where it's this lovely, gentle, scenic, forested road. Instead, it's kind of more like this, especially for your game, right? Your game or the consumer, take one or the other, is this four-door sedan that's trying to navigate this. The whole ecosystem is hostile to you. So how do we do this? How do we overcome this? Well, I gave you the green Boston slide, so that's part of it. I want to give you 3 more things that are going to help you, and here they are. I want you to nail the positioning for the game. I want you to nail the message, and I want you to test your store page. So, positioning, what is that? Positioning is who the heck is your game for, and how is it different from other games? So we studied 71,000 titles and found 2 groups of games, 2 groups of games, let's call it, where you take who it's for, why it's different, and you say, as a developer, this is the game that I am developing and producing for you, and this is how it's different from other games. And then if you look at all the player reviews and where these 2 things match, where the players say, yeah, that's exactly right, that's group number 1. Group number 2 is where the developer says, hey, this is what's great about the game, and the reviewers who like the game say, no, it's actually something different. You compare these 2 cohorts. The first group, where the developer understood the audience and why they should like the game, they did almost twice the revenue of the second group. So what that really means is that you should go out there and you should test your positioning. Who's your game for? Well, I have a city builder, right? T-30 is a 30-minute city builder. Therefore, it's for fans of city skylines. Wrong. We are for fans of people who want to be city builders but don't have enough time. They want to do things in small groups. That is not city skylines fans. Fortunately, we positioned correctly. All right. How do we know when we have the solid positioning, when we get this right? Well, 3 questions. Ask somebody, what is this game about? You show them the initial, the market material, the trailer, and so forth and so on. You show it to them, and if you can show it to them and they tell you exactly what the game's about back to you, actually don't show them the trailer, show animated GIFs or whatever, then you've got it. So here is Spirit Crossing. Spirit Crossing is a multiplayer game about, kind of looks like Zelda, right? I mean, you're exploring a landscape, you're building stuff. You already know it's multiplayer, so you're probably building stuff with friends, and you are talking to people in whimsical weirdo characters, right? This is exactly the positioning of the game. I'll skip these because I'm going to go. I'm running out of time. I want to get to the end. All right, you know what? Let's skip to number 3. Who's this for? Because it's a good one. The way to find out who your game is for, you can do it multiple ways. My favorite way is to figure out who bounces, who should bounce, right? So, what is the fastest way you can make your non-audience bounce? If this makes you look anxious, feel anxious, Dwarf Fortress is probably not for you. If this frightens you, then you probably shouldn't see Pan's Labyrinth. If you don't like the idea of 2 hockey dudes falling in love, you should probably not watch Heated Rivalry, right? These signal what they aren't for, whom they aren't for, and that you can sort of flip and say, okay, who's left? Who is this for? So that helps you sort of tell the story to your streamers on your site, on your Steam page, and so forth and so on. So you got the positioning. That's kind of like internally like, I'll show this to you. What is it? Who is it for? How is it different? How do you get the messaging right? So messaging is everything from the descriptions to screenshots to any outreach you send to press or streamers, Steam page, whatever. And I'm going to show you an exercise for getting all of these right. If you're worried about your screenshots, if you're worried about your short description, I run a messaging workshop, and a lot of people use this stuff to good effect. So let's say that you want to improve your short description. You've been inside of your game for 9, 18, 500 months, however long. You can't even tell what your game is about. Read through 100 other short descriptions. And I literally mean 100 others. Like, collect them, put them in either a spreadsheet or a text document, and then you will see a bunch of the, climb a surreal mountain on a pogo stick and make friends along the way. Good or bad, I don't know. It could be awesome. A game of survival and mystery. 3 to 10 explorers find themselves deep in the mountains of Transylvania. Okay, could be good, could be bad. The next generation of city bus driving simulation. Sell tickets and transport passengers. Some people love it, some people hate it. Either is okay. You look at literally 100 of them, and by the end of it, you'll start first of all, your brain will fall out of your head. So you get a drink of water or something like that. You'll notice things that you don't like about other game descriptions. They'll say things like, this game has striking visuals, explores stunning landscapes, fast-paced action. These are phrases that are repeated 1,000,000 times and are they're sort of empty calories. Because if a game has striking visuals, for God's sakes, you're going to see that from the freaking screenshots, right? You don't need to put that in your description. Stunning landscape, same thing. Fast-paced action, don't tell. Show it in your trailer. Show it in your UI. Show it in whatever. Don't tell me that it has compelling and engaging bosses. Show me how. Compelling and engaging bosses. What does that mean? It could be anything. On the other hand, this game is all about boss battles where you climb the boss and you have to murder them from on top of the boss, right? That is specific. Here is my freaking, don't do this, please. Or if you do, don't tell me. Or if you do and you make millions of dollars, do tell me. Conquer unique rounds, face unique bosses. The word unique is, I think, the ultimate sin because it is completely meaningless because you don't say how, right? Incredibly unique. How is that? Just, incredibly unique because blah. Well, you can just say blah and then forget about the unique part. But if that doesn't convince you, then the word unique appears 54,000 times in over 32,000 games. So you are not unique. I mean, you are, but you're not, whatever. All of this helps contextualize what you're trying to create because in looking at the other 100 descriptions, you are able to say, this is what the other gamers are going to be looking at. When they look at 100 games, they're going to see these other things, and I'm going to be just one of them. So sneak your game description in there and see how that works. Okay. Same thing for anything, right? You look at a ton of stuff, you figure out some lessons, write them down, and then iterate on your own thing. So this works for capsules. You look at these, you put yours in there. What do you notice? It works for email outreach. So for example, in I like animated GIFs in my email outreach, right? It works for your whole Steam page. Look at 100 other Steam store pages, especially in your genre and tag, and you will get a really good idea of what your differentiators should be. Do take care not to learn wrong lessons, right? I told you all about the overwhelmingly large number of best-selling games that have screenshots with no UI. I think, City Skylines can do it. I can't. Maybe you can, right? Yeah, there we go. 85,000 games. Those without UI grossed 46% less, but then, it's because they're all AAA that didn't have, right, whatever. Okay, whatever. No, whatever. What do we have next? Okay, how do you validate your store page? Because everybody asks that. I will tell you how to make a good Steam store page in 2026. My talk was in March. So in March, as of March, and probably true of June, do not use ChatGPT to write your Steam store page. it's going to end up sounding like jazzy nonsense. A cinematic first-person shooter where every play feels ridiculously satisfying, right? Don't do this. Generative AI, use it, but don't, that's not your end product. An exercise to get blunt feedback, and you can use ChatGPT or another actual human for this, is as follows. We'll do this. We'll do it this way. You can ask ChatGPT this. I give you permission, not that you needed it. Or you can ask a colleague. Step 1, tell your colleague or your chatbot, say, hey, I'm putting together this Steam store page for my game. Here's the name. Here's the, you put together a short description, long description, tags, and then ask your friend or your chatbot to summarize all the things that it finds interesting or they find interesting, right? Because if you put together a short description, here's, my game is you play a giant toilet that goes on a rampage and eats all of the dogs in Boston, right? What is interesting about it? Well, probably the toilets and the eating dogs, right? And you ask them what they find compelling about your page. And if they tell you what you think is compelling, then that's great. If they tell you the wrong thing, take message from that, because they might, that's wrong is the wrong word, if they tell you something that you don't expect, then maybe that should be at the forefront of your page, right? And if they have a hard time identifying what is remarkable and wonderful, then go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what made it interesting for you to create. So you'll get a bunch of feedback. It's long, jargon heavy, it's abstract. Why did you use the term modular build craft, survival craft, or colony? It doesn't make any sense. And then you can iterate on that. So you do that. And you try the same thing on the capsule. So you can say to, like this, a chatbot, you can say literally in the same conversation, describe this image in detail, give me an outline of what's good and bad for it as a product header on the Steam store page. To an actual human, you could say, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you notice about this? What is compelling? What kind of genre is this? What is this game even about based on that, right? And the same with the individual shots. I think 5 is a good number. Go show your colleague 5 shots of the game. And this helps if you haven't already had them play the game or if they don't know about this game. So pick a colleague that you respect but don't talk to every day. And you say, look, these 5 shots, what's good? What's bad? What do you notice? What would you change? What is confusing about it? And if you're talking to ChatGPT, again, you don't have to, but it's 3 a.m. and you're like, oh, the Steam store page is due tomorrow. Ask it, what do you give me an outline of what's good and bad. Don't trust ChatGPT because it's going to just rip your thing to shreds because it thinks that it's what you want to hear. Don't listen to your friends because they're going to pump you up or they're going to try to tell you what you hear that you think, they think you think is wrong with it. But read between the lines. Use all of that feedback, whether it's human or a robot telling you, and just sit back and think. Is this really good? Is this really a problem? Is it a problem that all of my screenshots are purple and look the same? Okay, I didn't notice that, but probably. So that's good, good process right there. All right. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. We did this. Okay, I think that's good. I can guarantee you that this stuff alone will not fix discovery for you all or me or everywhere. However, it is going to help you build this awesome, rugged thing. This is your game on the Steam store page that is a little better at navigating the horrid butt show that is the discovery ecosystem. And I promise, I'm working on it. We love it.io. Just, take a look at it. We're trying to solve discovery. Give it a week and a half, and we'll have it all solved for you. Okay, thank you. You want to do questions? Okay, we can do questions. We'll take a few.
Yeah, I was just curious, Ichiro, where do you see the revenue potential in games media? Because for me, it feels like a big piece of the problem in games discovery is that there is no real revenue incentive to make good recommendations.
Right.
Steam doesn't have an affiliate program.
Right.
Game devs spend, on advertising on the major platforms and not smaller ones. Mm-hmm. They don't have the audience. Mm-hmm. Where's the financial incentive to invest in creating good recommendation
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, so like that's my business right here, and this is what I had to convince a bunch of investors. And the answer is that the audiences are there. We can demonstrate that if you, for example, you go to Reddit and you make good recommendations, they will look at your stuff and they will upvote it a bunch, right? If you create content on TikTok and it's narrowly focused, people will eventually flock to that and find it, right? And how do I prove this? I don't have the graph. It's in my investor deck. We started last year. This is the numbers go up graph. Alex, you'll appreciate this. We did a test, and we said, let's use social media views as our KPI, our metric, and let's see if we can talk about game discovery to help aid game discovery for unknown games across Reddit, TikTok, not Twitter /X. We did Blue Sky. We did YouTube. We did blah, blah, blah. We didn't do Kick, whatever. And we started it out early in the year. We were like at 30,000 views per month, right? And this is on stuff that was relative to very specific populations. And we talked about a bunch of stuff. And again, I don't have the slide for this, but every month we were able to learn something new and be able to talk about game discovery in a different way until we get 30,000 views. By the end of, I think, 10 months, we got to 8.3 million views per month, which demonstrated to us that there's a hunger amongst gamers out there, which is good for you and it's good for me. It's good for our investors eventually. Are we going to turn that into an actual solution to game discovery? Well, you bet we are. Give us 9 months or just a week and a half.
So, Ichiro, you're talking about optimizing essentially the checkout lane.
Yes.
Most of this talk.
Yep.
So that still leaves the rest of the supermarket.
Yep.
To use that analogy. How do you see the supermarket changing over the next few years? Because there's certainly been a lot of discussions. We see some of the titans that are starting to fall. You take a look at Epic. You see Fortnite going from $8 billion in revenue a year to like 7, 6, less, and then starting to do major layoffs there.
Yeah.
How do you think the supermarket's going to get rearranged?
Okay. How are we gonna solve discovery? First of all, I love Valve. Valve's doing the best out of all the platforms, in my opinion, on discovery. They can't solve it. They won't solve it. I think it's going to get worse in the near term, right? TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, all these things are going to get more money by consolidating, conversation around fewer games. So that's just going to suck for a while. That's my answer to your question short term. Did you mean how is it going to improve longer term?
Well, how can it improve? Because here's the biggest challenge, right, is eyeballs and the awareness funnel. We know, I've been working in, acquisition for a long time, but if the biggest challenge is awareness, if the number one issue is that streamers are incentivized to go ahead and focus on these top 10,
right.
Engaging titles, Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox, whatever it is. How can a everyday developer who is not necessarily a marketing genius, but they have a great idea, they have a compelling product, they have 50 to 500 reviews that are in the 80% positive.
Yes. How do you break out? Okay, excellent question. I'm glad you asked it. That is why I want everybody in this room to get, and I apologize for the flashing lights if anybody, close your eyes. That's why I want, go to the beginning of the talk. That's why I want everybody to master the green slides, wherever the heck they are, right? The reason is because this is actually the fundamentals of every single marketing message you put out there. So if you can do, and where's the short description? If you can do a great short description for a great game, which is your game, you are going to be able to describe to a streamer succinctly why they should cover your game, right? Plan a city, build a space fleet, you have 30 minutes. If a streamer cares about that, they care about my game. If they don't care about that. Streamers have so much mail that they can only read at most the first line if you're, to say if you're interested in. Well, guess what? If you do a great short description, you have material for that streamer. So you reach out to the streamers, you reach out to the press, you talk about it on Blue Sky or X or whatever, and that is going to, that gets you into the top of their funnel. And same thing with every piece of media. You are putting interesting stuff out, and you bet that, again, the king is watching whenever they put that capsule out onto short form microblogging platforms, they got attention. You don't have to be, jazzy or anything like that, but in putting together this great media, including the screenshots and all of this stuff, you're putting stuff that will work best on the actual discovery surface out there right now. So that will do, we got a terrible situation. You're uphill both ways in the snow right now, but if you do these things better on your Steam store page, you're going to do it better off. Yeah.
How do you compare the accuracy of the Boxlighter method, sales method, to websites like Steam Spy that might be like a speculative?
Right.
What do you think about that?
Steam Spy, Sergey Galyonkin is brilliant, first and foremost. There are a couple of ways to estimate revenue. Boxlighter, so taking the review count, multiplying it by 35 or whatever, and then the thing, that is vaguely accurate. It is 0% accurate for free-to-play games because free-to-play games are free. And it's really bad for games with a lot of DLC because, I pay $1.99 for the base game and $500 for DLC. Well, the answer is I would use both of those and methods like you can sort of estimate it using, if you go to paperlens.app, that's our partner, Tim Ermilov, uses kind of like a Boxlighter Plus method. And then there are a couple other ways. I won't go into them, but I will say they don't matter so much in terms of should I make this game or not? It's like, did this game make $2 million or $3 million? It doesn't necessarily matter. If you get a bunch of reviewers, that means that you have a bunch of attention on the game, and that's worth something, right? There are a bunch of ways to answer the question. Is that,
Oh yeah, I think takeaway is just use all that data to your advantage.
If you're looking at publishers, use the one that gives you the biggest number. If you're being skeptical, it's like, what is the real ceiling on this genre? Then, kind of use maybe a smaller one. But I think if you use Boxlighter for premium Steam games, premium purchase Steam games, you'll get a reasonable kind of idea.
And I'm sorry, you mentioned something, Vapor Game?
Paperlens.app.
Thank you.
That is, it's cool. Look at it. Anybody else?
So tying marketing with discovering your games, how would you tie in marketing with discovering your games? For instance, if you have your indie game doesn't have a lot of views, and it has let's say 70 wish lists, and then.
Are you speaking hypothetically or specifically?
That's just the way I talk.
Yes.
Talking chill voice.
He's got a game, look at it, make more wish lists. All right, so if your game does not have, how do you start is what you're asking. You're at the beginning, everybody starts with 0 wish lists. How do you get more? Look, have I said that it's difficult enough? I'll shut up about that. The playbook is you go there and you talk about you understand the positioning of your game, right? What is unique and different? I use the word. What is actually different about your game? What sets it apart? Who's it for? Message that. Figure out how to talk about that. Talk to every single person in this room and figure out when they start saying, yes, it's interesting. Right? I had a game some time ago, Elegy for a Dead World, and it was a game about creative writing. And I used to describe it, and I went to people. I was at E3, and I'm like, it's a game where you go around and there's these dead civilizations, and you kind of walk and you discover stuff. And the way I described it was bad at first. Eventually, I did that so much at E3 that I said, Elegy for a Dead World is a game in which you explore long-dead civilizations based on the works of British Romance-era poets, and then you play the game by writing about them, right? And that got us a bunch of articles. So I would say you iterate, right? You try stuff out, you try different screenshots out, you put them on social media, see which ones get the most views. If you have some ad spend, you can A/B test a bunch of stuff and see which should I use this capsule? Should I use this screenshot? Should I use this way of, this animated looping GIF or whatever, and you can test.
And then if I had like someone who I know who has marketing experience, would that also be a good idea?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hells yeah. You're looking for a yes, and I'm going to give that to you because, yeah, absolutely. Good. One more. Okay, yes.
Do you have any tips specifically for reaching out to YouTubers and streamers? Because that's sort of the next thing that I'm going to be working on. Like how to get their attention and if they'll even cover my game at all.
Sure. Okay, so keep in mind that they are inundated by, depending on how popular they are, dozens, hundred thousands of emails in a week. Sometimes people 25,000 games we're expecting. So a lot of them may receive, 100 emails, before each time they open their mailbox. On top of that, there are people who are sending them like, hey, did you get my email? Did you get my email? So they're swamped. Immediately to the point from the subject line, if you can. What is who's the game for? What's the unique selling point of your game? And try to convey that immediately up front. In the first few lines, do not start with, hey, I'm a game developer. No, none of that. What is your game? I love an animated GIF at the next thing because immediately we love it. .io, our site is not really media, but we get a lot of inbound from game developers, and the stuff that catches my eye immediately is that animated thing. Your mileage may vary, but don't do this thing where you say a bunch of text and then expect people to read it. Short, snappy emails and outreach. Personalize it if you know the streamer, or if you watch the streamer or whatever a little bit, and then link out to the press kit or something like that. This isn't just my advice. The woman, Lise, a friend of mine, who did, I think she was PR person number 1 for Hinge. You know Hinge, right? The dating app. And when they were really, really tiny, she, helped them catapult. And she says to me that if you're going more than a paragraph in the body of the email, then you're probably bloviating too much, so keep it short. Mm-hmm. Let's see, what else?
So I guess if they're interested in the game, they'll look at the press kit.
Oh yeah, right? I mean, if they're interested enough, and remember, what you're trying to do isn't necessarily to pique their interest so much as to say, hey, for most of them, you are in the business of covering these games and getting views. My game is going to get you more views than any other thing you could cover this week, and here's why, really succinctly. Okay. Yep. All right. Okay, one more.
Oh, yeah, so, I think a lot of these points are great and very constructive.
I'm hearing a but. Let's hear the but.
What I'm wondering about is, I see some games on Steam where I'm like, no amount of marketing would ever save this.
Yes.
It was, dead right off the launch pad from its conception. Do you have any thoughts or advice on sort of as you're evaluating your list of ideas when you're beginning a project, what sort of metrics would you look for to go, okay, this is an underserved market. Obviously, there's creative things that I like this idea for whatever reason. But is there a way to sort of evaluate the sort of marketing aspect as you're starting to build it, rather than how do we polish it once we're ready to build it?
Perfect. I love that question. That is my favorite question. Not just today, but anything about marketing. I will say 2 things. Number 1, if you're not on the Boston Game Dev Slack, be on the Boston Game Dev Slack. And number 1B, we are. This is separate from the Slack, but that's how you can. I'm always on the Slack. We're doing a book club for a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship, and that answers your question. It is, and everybody is welcome. If you're at all interested in this, look at it. It's kind of a weird book because it is by an MIT Sloan professor, and it's about tech startups, but I think that it has a bunch of lessons that apply here. So the short answer is that there are 2 things that you could do to figure out, if your idea is good. Primary and secondary market research. Secondary market research is what everybody should be doing, but everybody does. They go to Steam, they go to SteamDB, they go et cetera, and they look at what is already out there. How many games are there between the last few years in the gladiatorial management cat simulator genre, and let's boxlighter it or whatever method you want to use to estimate, say, and figure out how healthy is that. Our consumers, our gamers saying that they want such and such a thing, that's secondary market research. Primary market research is actually going and talking to real human people, which is very difficult because how do you find all gladiatorial management cat sim fans? That's tougher, but if you're interested in join the book club, it's a free book club, but the book's not free, but I don't get a cut. Basically, you talk to a bunch of people through, whatever means, online, you do surveys, you can talk to people, that play games and on Reddit, so forth and so on. And then you have to sort of figure out how to ask them your question without directly asking, do you like gladiatorial management cat sims? Because they'll say, yeah, okay. All right.
Where's this book club meeting? Sorry.
It is on the Discords, and you find the Discords by coming to down a road in the country. You go to Slack and or email me, and anybody is welcome. All are welcome.
Is it Slack or Discord?
Sorry, I apologize. That was confusing. I'm always on Slack, on the Boston Games Slack, which all of you should be, and therefore, whenever you want to talk to me at all, just be on Slack and say, hey, I'm interested in the book club, which is on Discord, which is a competing platform, but you can't get to me on the Discord. It's a whole thing. Yeah, all right, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Hey, Mark, how you doing, Mark? Hey, Mark, hey, Mark, hey, how you doing?
We have the recording